and welcome to Dregs of Wisdom with Andrew Tanner.
Hi everyone, we are here at Dregs of Wisdom, episode 19. My guest today is Hania Khuri-Trapper, who is a yoga teacher, lead teacher in the Boston area. She leads retreats. She's led at Gillette Stadium at Yoga Reaches Out. She has an amazing book called Rest and Return, weekly reminders to pause, reflect, and just be. And I met Hanya at Yoga Reaches Out. It's like a yearly event for raising money for cancer research and the Children's Cancer Hospital. And when I first met Hanya, I was like, this lady is like too nice. Like she's something like she's too like whoa, she's like super happy. She is like really like what is her deal? I'm like, this can't be real. And I remember because I was almost introduced to you before. And then when we actually met, I was like, oh my God, this is really her. She is this beam of light. She is this lovely being. And so I wanted to start by asking you to share, where does your light come from, Hanya?
Oh, what a beautiful question right off the bat. Well, hi, thank you for having me. Wow, where does my light come from? That's a really good question. I have my father used to say, it's funny, thinking back as a child, I had a pretty loving childhood. And my father used to say that I had a lot of joy to me. I had a lot of joy. My name even means joy. But I had a lot of, he used to say I have a zest for life. There was this old film, French film called Gigi, and there's a song, Thank Heaven for Little Girls. And he used to sing that to me. And he used to just think I had a lot of joy and a lot of zest for life. And I think I just naturally do, maybe. And maybe it is because I feel very fortunate that I had a really loving family, loving childhood. So I kind of bring that with me wherever I go, I guess.
Well, I guess we can get right into that because the TLDR is that you grew up. Can you share where you were born and a little bit about your childhood?
Oh boy, you have a few hours. No. Yeah, I was born actually in Beirut, Lebanon. My parents are originally Palestinian, 100%. But I was born in Lebanon. I came to this country when I was about a year and a half. My father was doing a residency program at the Mayo Clinic and John Hopkins. One's in Minnesota, one's in Maryland. I forget which one's in which, but we lived in both places. And my sister was born in Baltimore. And then we ended up coming to Boston so that we could, he could work with Harvard. He wanted to do research. But the reason that we even came to Boston was because the civil war in Beirut started when we were very young. So we were not able to go back. So all the cousins said, stay in the States, you'll be better off, you're safer there. And that's why we chose Boston. He chose Boston because he wanted to do his work that was there. And so that's why we ended up here. And I grew up in a town outside of Boston called Westwood. And I've been here, well, I grew up here since I was around 5 years old, I guess. And I've been here, and then I swear to God I left, but then I did come back. So I guess you could say I'm a little bit of a townie.
Yeah,
But
I didn't realize you were raised in Westwood and stayed in Westwood.
Yes, well, I did go away and I did study and I studied abroad, and then I did some things and lived in Boston for many, many years, and then came back to Westwood when we were thinking about having kids and raising a family, and we thought, why not? Why not try? So we moved to the other side of town, so I don't feel it feels a little different. But
so growing up, did you have connections? Like, were you ever able to go back and visit Lebanon? Have you
yeah,
been to Palestine at all, or Gaza,
no.
or no? Okay. But do you
Yeah,
have
so
family in those areas? What's
yeah,
your
so the Palestinian situation is the situation all over is very, very, very difficult now, especially, but it has been for many years since since I think since my parents had to leave in 1948. So that's a whole story, and we have a whole story around that, with our family and how we ended up where we ended up. But yeah, so it's just, I think growing up, in, we were able to go back maybe a few times to Lebanon, to Beirut, Lebanon. We had a apartment there for a while. So we went back a few times as I was growing up, but was never able to go back to Palestine. But my mom did go on a church pilgrimage to go just to the Holy Land, and she was able to see her home, but not able to go in it or near it. So, but she was able to see it. So she painted it with a watercolor painting, and it's beautiful. But yeah, it's a sad story, I guess you could say.
I mean, it's that part of the world has been in our lifetimes just a
Yeah,
lot of
in
pain
our
and
lifetime.
suffering. Yeah. What
Yeah,
I'm curious as a yoga teacher, obviously you have roots in the region, and right now
yeah,
it's such a crazy time.
yeah,
Do you feel like, how do you navigate that as a
yeah,
teacher? You know, and
yeah,
how do you navigate, as a yoga teacher, in some ways, our job is just to help people where they're at with their their needs to rest and return,
right.
as you write in your book.
Yeah,
But then, you know, this is on the news every day. Like, how has it been for you? Is it something that you're bringing into your classes with what's going on in Gaza? I know that, um, you know, I know on your Instagram, your photo is ceasefire now. So
hmm,
is that something you're just kind of keeping there and kind of letting people bring to you, or are you more actively trying to share it?
yeah. It's a really great question, and um, yeah. So I can talk about how I've been before October 7th, and then I can talk afterwards. So
Mm,
um, before, I'll say before October 7th and that horrific attack by Hamas on innocent Israelis, that before that, I had always grown up um, having a struggle within, feeling very sad about my family being displaced. And, my parents were sort of terrorized. My parents were terrorized when they were 3 and 4 years old. Their families were forced to leave, and there's different narratives, and there's people that speak on different sides, and both are correct. My grandmother tells the story about how when in 1948 there are two narratives. There's the narrative of, you could say, the Arab Palestinians that were um, terrorized. They would say they were forced and with firearms and um, led to flee their homes during El Nakba, which is the 1948 displacement.
yeah.
There's also the Israelis would say that the Arab or the Jewish people at the time would say that the Arab leaders were telling everybody to leave. So, and both are true. Both are true. So my grandmother, as she was leaving, her very close Jewish friend said, "Stay with me, like you
Mm,
can live with me." Um, and she said, "I don't think I can take my whole family and live with you. That doesn't seem right." So she left, and was never able to return. Um, and it's their home was demolished after they had left. After they had left and been told that they could come back after 2 weeks. My mom's home was in Haifa. My dad's was in Jerusalem. My mom's home was in Haifa, and her home is still standing. And I mentioned that she had been back with the pilgrimage and was able to see it. And there's a different family from a Russian family that moved into it, and we never got our anything. We don't have any heirlooms or anything like that um, because we were never allowed to go home. It's like saying like you can go away for 2 weeks on vacation, but then whatever you brought with you is all you have for the rest of your life, that kind of thing. But they were able to luckily start a very loving and happy home in Lebanon where they both families went and lived. And then my mom and my father met each other when my mom was in nursing school and my dad was in studying to be a doctor. So that's how they met, in their group of friends and that kind of thing.
Was
Um,
your sorry to just to clarify, are your parents Christian, Muslim, Jewish?
yeah.
What was their
Yeah. Yep. So and that's probably part of the reason that we were able to leave. My parents, we were Christian, we're Episcopalian.
mm,
You know that Palestine was a British colony.
Right.
And so the religion was Episcopal or Anglican,
Right.
and for all the Christians.
The
But
British.
there's a lot of Palestinian
Yeah.
Christians. People don't even realize that there
Right.
are. But yeah, but I have a lot of Muslim close friends as well. But yeah.
But so then they were, pushed out in 48 and
Yeah.
displaced essentially. And then, so you were saying before October 7th,
Yes.
you grew up with that as part of your identity, this idea that your family had been pushed out of their ancestral home,
Yes.
by the formation of the state of Israel,
Exactly.
right? And did you like connect that to basically all Jews or to just Israel? What I'm curious,
Yeah.
as a young woman, what was that
Yes.
like for you? What
That's a
was your
great
mindset
question.
around that?
I mean, we grew up over time when I was young, getting calls in the middle of the night with really high level academics or high level people in the state that were assassinated at different times. People's, people that we knew, fathers were taken away and just put in jails without any due course and all that kind of thing. So we heard all of these things. We knew what was happening on the ground when most people didn't. And so, yes,
Was
there
you
was
saying like
some.
the 70s and in the 80s, or
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And even into the 90s. I mean, this was ongoing.
right.
But so yes, I had some anger within me. I had some resentment, and but the worst part for me was worrying what people thought of me.
Mm,
So it wasn't really the anger that I had towards people. I literally have met people in my past where they ask me what my nationality is, and I'll say, originally I'm Palestinian, but I was born in Lebanon, and they'll turn away and walk away from me. Like, I've had that happen multiple times. I've had people get like just completely changed the way they talk to me. I even rushed a sorority at Syracuse when I went to Syracuse University, and everyone loved me, and I had like this great experience during rush week. And the last night, they were like, "So when was your bar mitzvah?" Or they were asking me something about being Jewish because they thought I look the same, I act the same. I am not
yeah,
any different.
you're a
Um,
Semite.
I'm a Semite.
Right.
I am a Semite, you know. And so and I said, "Oh no, I'm not Jewish." And they said, "Oh, well, what are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm Christian, but and they're like, "Where are you from?" And I told them, and then the next day I was dropped from the sorority.
Oh, wow.
That happened.
Oh,
That wasn't new for me. I actually have one quick story if you want to hear it.
please.
Um, I am a graphic designer also. That was like, the book, you can see that I designed the book and everything. But that was my job for many, many years before I became a yoga teacher. And I was an art director, so I would go across the country and go on these photo shoots with the photographer and the client, and I was the art director. And I remember we went to Texas, and we went to all these different places for this one company. It was like Scudder Investments or something. And we were trying to film real people. So we were filming like ranchers in Texas. And, we went to Rhode Island, to Point Judith, Rhode Island, and hung out with all these fishermen. And we got to like go on the boat with them and meet them and really talk with them. And so we spent a whole day photographing them for this campaign. And at the end of the day, they're like, "Do you want to come have a beer with us?" And we're like, "Sure." So we sat with all these fishermen. It was me, the photographer, and the client, and we had the best time. And at one point, one of the fishermen looked at me and he said, "I have like a mole in my forehead." And he said, "Are you Indian?" And I said, and I
Sorry.
said, and I said, "No, why?" And he said, "Well, you have this thing on your forehead." And I was like, "Oh, a bindi? But I'm not Indian." Um, but okay, no, not Indian. And then he said, "Well, what are you?" And I said, "Well, and I'm like, oh boy." And so I said, "I'm Palestinian." And he said, "Oh, do you have a bomb in your bag?" And I had this moment where I was like, I could either get mad at him, or
Mm,
I could sort of laugh and sort of figure out a way to talk about it. And
mm.
so I did the second. I said, "Yeah, and I might use it if you keep acting like that," or whatever. I said something where I was kind of joking
Oh,
back with him.
that's a good
And
comeback right there.
yeah, it's like, I
What
might
did he
use it.
say?
And then he turned to me and said, "No, what does that mean?" He actually asked, like, "What does that mean that you're Palestinian? What does that mean? Like,
Oh,
where is that?" Like, and so I sat with him and I told him like my whole family story. And
mm,
it was a bunch of fishermen and my client and my photographer. And I was sitting here like a soliloquy, giving this story to this fisherman. And I didn't think anything of it because this is something I have to do all the time. Like I have to
Mm.
explain myself. Like this is, like I'll say what I am and it's never like, oh, cool, you're Italian or, oh, cool, it's like there's something heavy around it, and there's
Mm.
a lot of people
Yeah.
see it as less than, or, there's a lot of racism around it, so I gave this long talk and then then we just started drinking and it was fine. And we were having our chowder and we left and we were driving home and the photographer looked at me and goes, I can't believe what you just did. And I said, what? He said, you just changed an entire group of people's opinion about,
Mm.
a terrorist, like terrorists or whatever, because they had never met a Palestinian that wasn't, who, whatever they thought. So
Yeah.
it feels like I call myself like the accidental activist. Like I don't even want to be, I
Mm.
don't want this role, but for some reason I have to speak and I have to share, and I try to do it in a way that's accessible and loving. And maybe that's part of the reason I have a lot of joy to me. It's because I'm able to, I don't know, I'm able to like move beyond that. I was able to move beyond the anger of my sort of childhood about like this. I had a really happy, loving childhood, but at the same time, this sad, overwhelming survivor's guilt feeling.
Mm.
Um, but, and then the joy is there because we're able to be here, and I'm very grateful for everything, I guess.
It seems that we forget. I think a lot of the people that come to yoga or that you and I might interact with that are privileged and educated, we find it hard to imagine that so many people think much more simplistically about the world.
Yeah,
Like Palestinians, for many people, are just okay, terrorists. We lump that they lump that in
right.
their brain and then they let it go. And now what we see happening is a lot of narrative pushing to dehumanize a whole group of people, right?
Right. Right.
And
And
when we
it's,
see the Palestinians as terrorists, it's easy to have a full-scale war that's where there's, war crimes being committed and innocents
yeah,
being killed. And I think it's really important. Just, it's not, what's funny is the work you're doing, it's just being a human.
yeah,
And if more of us had interactions with more people, we could never see them as non-human.
right.
Um, so
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly. So the years of me just kind of saying, I'm Palestinian and I'm not crazy and I'm not going to, blow you up or whatever the perception is. So just me, by just living my life as in the example and the way my whole family lives our lives, like, Palestine, nobody knows this, but it was an intellectual hub for many, many years. And it was, there were Jews, Arabs, Muslims living peacefully
mm,
there for generations and generations. My grandmother told me stories. She had friends, a Muslim and a Jew right next to each other. They were there. It wasn't what it is now and what it has been since 1948 or, um, so there was a life before that where people don't even recall because and it was even on the map before. People don't even realize that there was an actual country before 1948. You can look at any map before and it
yeah,
was there,
before
you know.
Israel. I mean, yeah, there's,
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm not an expert. I
No,
want to go into all that.
no, we don't have to go into,
I'm
but
sure we can
I
look
guess
on other YouTube videos for that. Like,
yes,
when was
yes,
it this? When was it
yes,
that?
we don't need to do that. No.
I've
And,
watched,
but
yeah,
you
but
did ask a really good question about like, before, like, how do you handle it with your students and how are you
mm,
how are you engaged? And the thing that I did, especially since October 7, I was really struggling because I'm teaching people and I'm working every day. I teach like 15 classes a week. I teach at a place that there's a lot of Jewish people and there's a lot of Israelis. And I have
mm,
a lot of really loving Israeli students that I adore and love. And they love me. And some of them didn't even know I was Palestinian.
mm,
Um, and when they did, I remember there were moments where we would look at each other in class, and after class we would look at each other and just be like, how are you, and then we each look, how are you, this is what happened after October 7. We both kind of said it was like a shared humanity where we kind of just love each other and cared for each other and were concerned for each other's everybody, for the people in each other's lives,
it,
and the
really
humanity's kind of
it,
lost.
the leaders are, I really, I don't know. Are you aware? Recently, I saw that there was a protest in Israel against Netanyahu's. I
Oh,
mean,
there's a lot
government
every
is
day.
people don't realize Israel's extremely divided. It says
Yes.
the left, the right divide is as strong there as it is here.
Yes.
And I'm curious if I think as Americans, we have a kind of distorted view of all that.
Yes, we do.
But
We
at
don't
the end of the
actually
day,
hear it.
The governments, the leaders that are making the decisions to be at war with each other, they are the ones that are choosing not to see humanity anymore.
100%.
Blinded by greed, by power, by delusion.
Yeah.
And
most Palestinians, so many Palestinians, many are against Hamas too. Like they don't even believe in Hamas at all. And a lot of people in Israel don't believe in Netanyahu. They think he's a warmonger, and he's corrupt and he's actually harming Israel's reputation around the world. So, but nobody is safe with these people in power. Nobody is safe. And it's, we have extreme people on both sides that are negotiating, and they're not negotiating, but they're the ones in charge. And there's the voice of reason has been lost, and the voice of humanity is completely gone. And now it's allegiance after allegiance, and there's no. This is such a nuanced situation, and there's so much complexity, and there are many truths that all exist in this complexity that need to be listened to. And so when we don't listen to each other, when the leaders don't listen to each other, when the leaders have an agenda that bypasses humanity, it bypasses reasonable thought, then we're all in trouble. And this is getting more global. It's seeping out into the world. There's protests all over the world about this situation right now. So if everybody wants security, if for Israel, and if we're looking at two different situations, but even for a secure Israel, this is not the way to do it. We can't bomb your way into peace. There's no way to do this. And for the Palestinians, we have to recognize Israel, and we do. And there's so many that do, and not support Hamas, or some extremist group, Unfortunately, this is we could go into the situation even more in depth. But for me, the hard part is that I'm seeing stuff on the ground. I'm seeing what's happening every day. And I have to still go to class and teach to everybody. And I have to sort of work towards healing others. Like I work towards guiding people to find their own healing within themselves when I'm struggling myself with what I'm seeing every day. So that's this hard thing for me and what I've been kind of struggling with. But then I went to other people, other leaders, other spiritual leaders that I look to, like Tara Brach, Jack Kornfield. Like these are two of my greatest teachers, and their response has been so beautiful in the way they've responded to this crisis and this situation. I've also looked to Thich Nhat Hanh and how he handled the situation when he was in war in Vietnam, and how he handled his situation. And he coined the phrase "engage Buddhism." That phrase, it asks us to speak and to use our voice and to be active and engaged in the world. A lot of times yoga teachers think, I'm not going to touch that, or I'm not going to talk about anything because, I want this to be a safe space. But yoga is not always comfortable. There's discomfort in the practice, and if we were to just be able to hold space for everybody, and for, I hold space for Israelis. That I have a Zionist in my class who talks to me about being Zionist, and we talk about it, and we have conversations about it. And I love him, I love this man. He's a sweet, sweet man. And we have a difference of opinion, but that doesn't mean that we can't still talk, and we can't still work with each other and heal each other, and because we listen, even if we disagree, we listen.
When you say Zionist, do you mean just believing that the state of Israel should exist, or do you mean
that's a great question?
Believing that Israel should take over the Gaza Strip and push out everyone from certain borders? Because I think Yeah, defining
You're
Zionism is a good one.
That's a great question. There are many layers of it. There's many
Mm.
types of, there are people that identify with the idea of eradicating the Palestinians completely from the region. Then there's other people that just want a Jewish state where they have a homeland. So
Mm.
and those are both, again, the complexity is there. The truths are there. They're both true. They're both true for each individual who believes it. Um, so I guess when I was referring to that, um, he 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 wants it to exist regardless of the situation in a way, but he recognizes the humanity. So it's difficult. I mean, um, it's not something that I can solve, but the semantics are the problem with the language and the narrative right now is that you can't criticize the government of Israel without being anti-Semitic, without people coining you anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
But we criticize our government all the time, and
Right.
we're not against America, So
Well, it depends who you ask on that, but I
yeah,
agree. As a Jew, a bar
yeah,
mitzvah Jew, I think it's right to criticize the how far the response has gone and the lack of all respect and restraint, and the violence and the death and the killing of innocents has been just it's been disgusting,
yeah,
in my opinion. I think it's interesting. When I look at I've been following this whole story. I can see both sides. It's hard for me to have clarity on what I believe about it. For example, when I say believe, not what I believe is true or not, but what I believe should be the answer.
right,
I think you could go back and look at the past, and some people make the argument like the same argument of we should give all the land back to the Native Americans is the argument of you should give all the land back to the Jews or something. You know what I mean? That if you go back the farthest back in history
and
that
I
you can
totally
go,
agree. I totally hear what
like,
you're saying.
is America going to give all our land back to the Native, people?
No,
But then at the same time, um, you know, we can look back at 48 and say, well, we should give the land back and make it Palestine again, and it should, but now it's almost been 80, 75 years,
yeah,
and you can't really do that. It's the same
right.
problem. But if
there's
you look,
there's all these times of borders, like the 67 borders, like there's
right,
different points at different times. But I think at this point,
how do we move
clearly,
forward? And
I don't know how that would work, but I do know that right now it's not working. Whatever is happening right now
well,
is not working, and even within the space that they have now, um, in my own personal hope or whatever, I don't actually believe that we're going to be getting the land back. I don't think that's going to happen. But just to obviously stop the killing now,
yes,
and to the people that are there in those occupied places, in Gaza, which is a military occupation, like this is, and we even in the West Bank where there's so much violence there now too.
yeah,
Um,
and where
let's
they're
just
trying, they're
stop.
doing
Let's just
illegal
stop.
settlements. Yeah,
That's it. That's it. I think, yeah, that's right. So stop the growing of illegal settlements, and with the people there now, let's try to create some kind of humanity for them, like some civil society in some way. This is it's inhuman what's happening right now. It's beyond my comprehension. When I'm
yeah,
seeing these, if you actually watch Al Jazeera English and you're actually watching what's happening on the ground, or you're watching some of these people that are blogging from the actual places, there's no way that I can imagine that someone would support it. Like if you're actually seeing what's happening on the ground
yeah.
with these
I
innocent children.
encourage, yeah, I encourage people to seek out actual footage, like on
Yeah,
YouTube and Twitter, and
yeah,
it is it is overwhelming
it's
what's happening,
overwhelming.
and a lot of there are genocides happening in the world that we're not seeing, whether
Yeah,
it's the Uyghurs in China, but
yeah,
and I know I'm throwing around a heavy word right now, but
mm,
it's the 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 death toll that's happening right now is insane.
It's insane.
Um,
And it's still
and
happening, and it's still right now as we speak. It's happening, you know. The
and I
babies
think,
are, yeah.
yeah, I think that your whole message of rest and return for your book is like
Right.
we need to at least stop
Yes.
and then figure out the next step.
Cool the temperature.
Yeah, but
Cool down the temperature and start using reason and start using empathy and humanity in this. And first of all, we have to get rid of the leaders that are in charge, because these leaders are never going to create any kind of solution. They neither side wants a solution. Neither side right now, the people that are in charge, and so I feel like the leaders are the biggest problem. I think that the majority of the people just want to live in peace, and it's just we have these extreme governments on both sides that are holding back this process, and it's just it's un it's really not even something we can even comprehend what's happening. But regardless of that, it's the the work here in the States is to, I guess, I feel like we need to educate the people around us so that we could put pressure to start to work towards solutions rather than just keep arming people, arming.
is there
Um,
any organizations that you know of, like I think a lot of Westerners have this idea that like Palestinians equal Hamas. They elected
no,
Hamas, and now Palestinians are just a monoculture of Hamas. I mean, I was thinking the other night how weird it is that, and maybe I just because I've never seen it, maybe I haven't looked hard enough to find it, but are there leaders from Hamas giving statements? Are there who's from Hamas is negotiating? Like there normally in a normal war, there would be a diplomat from both sides,
right.
and even in the war with Russia and Ukraine, you can hear a 3-hour interview with Vladimir Putin. You can hear public statements. But with this war, it's very strange. I don't hear
It's
any voices except I hear from the first responders,
mhm,
that are just dealing with the carnage. I'm
right.
curious if you know of, like, it's clear that the leaders on both sides want to kill each other, but then
Mhm.
in Israel, there's some movement to have a pushback against Netanyahu, and
Yeah.
we kind of know who those people are. Do we know, is there a movement? Is it just been weakened too much? Like, are there any voices or leaders in Palestine that you follow that are kind of speaking for this moderate and a path forward?
There's a lot of people that are speaking on behalf of the Palestinians. If you listen to they may not necessarily be part of Hamas, because I actually don't know people in Hamas at all. So, but I would say if you want to look to someone who's speaking very eloquently and understands the whole scope of the work, look to Queen Rania, who is the Queen of Jordan. She's Palestinian, her heritage, but she has been speaking very vocally and continuously. Um, and if you listen to anything that she has been putting out, you can kind of follow her. She's been speaking as sort of a representative of the Palestinians in many ways, of and also sharing with what's been happening on the ground and what kind of solution could look like. Like she's very eloquent in the way she speaks. I would urge you just to listen to what she says. I posted a couple of things on my own
Yeah, I saw that.
feed about her, and I just feel like she's such a voice of reason, and a voice that the United States, people here can understand,
We need
and
a
very
woman
clear.
leader. We need women leader in the Middle East.
And a woman. I mean, my God, yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe
I
we
mean,
have to get these men out of here.
I think that it
Ugh,
doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman, you can be a great
I know.
leader, but
Of course,
it would be so interesting in the Middle East
yeah,
to, I mean, the men
yeah.
haven't been able to solve it. So
No, let's get Queen Rania in there. And then maybe like an awesome Israeli woman who can speak with her. And yeah, this is, yeah, I have a lot of, I know a lot of groups that are working towards peace. But there's so many out there, but they're not able to do anything with the leaders in charge. So the first thing has to happen is that the leaders have to change. There's no way this is going to get solved. So, but
before you
yeah,
mentioned, you were mentioning that you've been looking into Thich Nhat Hanh and
Yeah.
other leaders, and how they've dealt with challenges and war.
Yeah.
And in Stoicism and in Taoism and Buddhism, there is this idea of like when you meditate on death, it makes life more real.
Yes.
It's one of the Satipana in the Satipana
Yeah.
Sutta, the idea of one of the mindfulness practices of the Buddha is to meditate on death.
That's right.
I'm curious if you've noticed that, has this war been something like, have you realized a spiritual benefit? And I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
the benefit.
No, it's
have you noticed that your spiritual practice has been affected by this?
yes, 100%. Yeah, that's a beautiful, um, it's a beautiful challenge, I would say, because when I was studying Thich Nhat Hanh and how he engaged in Vietnam, there was this one village that he was living with all of his monks, all the monks there, and the village would get destroyed, and everyone would come and they'd rebuild the village, and then maybe another time later it would get bombed again, and then he would ask everybody to come back out, rebuild this village. It happened a few times until one of his monks or the people with him were like, why are we going to keep doing this? What, this is too much. It's too much. We can't keep doing this. And he decided to create a 1 day a week where they don't do anything. They don't look at the news. They don't read anything. They only meditate, and they only give themselves this space 1 day a week. And the rest of the days would be the days they would be active and working towards this peace and um, peace negotiations. But 1 day a week, he would tell everyone, require everybody to not look at anything, to not do anything at all, but to meditate and to come back to the practice, the tools. And I think that I've been leaning on the tools a lot lately, the tools of meditation, the tools of mindfulness, and even the practice of sort of the meditation on death, which is powerful. Tonglen is a powerful meditation technique of inhaling that sort of suffering and being able to exhale this compassion, so there's a lot of techniques that are helpful. Pema Chodron has a beautiful Tonglen practice that people can follow. But I've been probably working more with my practice than I ever have been, because I'll have to go, I will watch the things that are happening, as soon as I get up, because of course it's later there. And then I'll have to go teach. And I will, before I even walk into class, I'll ground myself. I'll even like hold on to a wall and just give myself a moment to close my eyes and just be present, because I want to be present for my students. And every time I walk into the room, there's a whole bunch of people that have a whole bunch of things happening in their lives, and I have nothing about. So I need to be able to keep bringing the space for these people to experience their lives and the struggles that they have. And all of our struggles are different, but everyone struggles. It's the root of Buddhism is the understanding of that suffering exists, and it's not something that's going away. It's part of our existence that we need to understand that it's there. And the more that we understand that it's there, and the more we sit with it and allow ourselves just to be present for all of it, the more we can start to move through it, and the more we can start to find the joy again and the lightness again. But it's a work of moving through the mud. It's moving through and sitting with the mud a lot to be able to be able to get to that place where the lotus flower can bloom on the top, where there's that beautiful beautiful bloom at the end of the stem. But the work happens every day, and it happens every time we give ourselves those moments to lean in on the practice, the tools of the practice. But I found myself using them. I am more than ever more in tune with my own self and what's been going on, because I can feel it in my body. I can feel the anger, the sadness. I can feel it all. And in the Vipassana practice. It's really a practice of observing, and really noticing every single sensation that's happening and arising, and really kind of finding that insight there into what's, what is it telling you, what can you do with it, how can you be with it, and then how can you move through it. It's powerful.
Yeah, so when you were sharing with me before that when you were younger, you had, I think it was a Jewish friend or something. There was some story that you shared. Maybe you can share it today, but I remember that when we're younger, often, and some people, they never get over this. They just live in a sense of an ego. How is everything related to me? And to be a good yoga teacher, to be doing the work that you're doing, to hold space for others, you have to let your ego go, and you have to be compassionate and fully present for others, which requires seeing yourself as bigger than just the I. Right. And I wonder if you remember first the story of how you used to be caught in ego, and then when did you open up to this bigger sense that you can be a vessel for compassion, that you can see the humanity in someone who disagrees deeply with you on something of vital importance.
Yeah. I feel like the tools, one of the tools of mindfulness is deep listening. And I can't stress how important empathetic listening is, and how I've done it within myself, for myself, and how I do it with my students. When you look at someone in the eye and you are empathetically listening to them, which means you're actually showing your whole body is listening. Your whole body's listening, not just your ears, not just your eyes, but your physical whole body is with that person. It's really hard to hate and be angry. It's hard. So I feel like for me, I've had years of feeling like worry. It wasn't really anger, but it was like worried about what other people would think of me, because of who I am and because of my background, just simply from my background. But I had to start to let that go. And I had to start to lean in the discomfort of like, maybe they're not going to, I'm not somebody for everybody. Maybe they're on their own journey, and maybe eventually they'll open up their eyes and they'll find the compassion to accept people no matter what, but maybe I can't do that for everybody. But what I can do is the people I interact with, the people that are in my life, I can give them my full attention, and I can be with them completely. And that's how I work. That's how it works for me.
When did you have that awakening? Do you remember when that was?
I think it was through years and years of work, and years and years of work, and years of also like going through the ego with yoga. As a yoga teacher, there's a point where people will tell you a lot, like, you changed my life. You've done this for me. You've done that. And so often it's so uncomfortable to hear that for me that I turned it away and just kind of put it back on them. And I said, I might be guiding you, but you're doing the work. And the moment you put me up on a pedestal is the moment I'm going to fall right off. I don't want to have that pressure on myself. It's too much. I don't want it. I don't want to own it. So for me, the ego, it actually, I think it might have, the letting go of the ego might have come when I started getting a little adoration for being a teacher. I'm not a person that likes I love to receive and hear that people were benefited from my teachings or from the things I share, because what I share is from other people as well. So, all of this is all collective shared information and shared knowledge and shared wisdom and shared love. This all, we're all kind of remixing this work of all these wisdom traditions where, I might be doing the work and doing the deep dive of reading the stuff, but I'm translating it to an accessible way for you to sort of absorb in your life. But we're all like, the Ram Dass quote, which I can't, inspired my book, which is, we're all just walking each other home. I'm not walking ahead of you. I'm not walking behind you. We're just together in this, and we'll share what we have and what we know when we learn. And I just keep saying that, I'm just going to keep learning, and I do the work to learn so that I can share it, but I'm no better than you or this person next to me or a student or another teacher. And when I've seen a lot after years and years of teaching yoga, I've seen a lot of the ego in the yoga teachers, and it just turns me off completely because it's the opposite of what it should be or what it's about. So I really, really try to lift other teachers around me. And I also try to diffuse when people say, you did this. I always turn to them and say, no, you did it. I might be guiding you, but you did it. You did the work. I'm not doing the work for you.
Yeah, I had a teacher once that told me it was good to say, we did it.
Yeah, that's nice. I love that. We did this together. That's
Yeah,
it.
we're doing this together.
And when I had this past retreat, I went to Mexico with 28 people, and a lot of them didn't know each other. There were different groups of people that came, nobody knowing each other. And by the end, they were all teaching each other, listening to each other. I felt like I could step back almost and let them all have this experience together, and that was beautiful to watch. So I've never been possessive about friendships or about my teaching. I've tried, at least I try not to be. Um, and sometimes when I actually see friendships form or people, teachers like using things that I might have shared, it actually kind of makes me happy to see that.
What do you think is the most, important lesson from your book, and why did you call it rest and return?
Yeah.
The return, the walking us home from Ram Dass, the quote. Why rest and return?
Because when we learn how to pause in our lives, when this power of the pause is really important. Um, that pause allows us to give us a moment to figure out what's happening, where you're feeling depleted, where you're feeling um, exhausted. And a lot of times we don't even realize the mental exhaustion we're going through every day. We think of exhaustion or being depleted as a physical, sensation or physical thing. But so often it's the mental exhaustion that really brings people to this place of not having anything left. And I've seen that in so many people. So my message in the book is about giving yourself the pause so that you can refuel, refill, and so that you aren't living and moving from that place of depletion. You're actually moving from a full, whole place. And that takes real deep awareness about where you are. And it takes boundaries. It takes you saying, no, I need this time for myself so that I can replenish and come back to who I am. And, there's stories that I tell in the book about that idea of the pause, like how powerful it can be. And a friend of mine actually took a story I said in class the other day, and she put it in her book. And she talks about the power of the pause as well in her book. And she has a book all about kindness, my friend Tara Cousino. But I tell this story about how when I had bought my first like fancy car, and I was very excited about this car. And I remember I was the person that would park the car like really far from everybody else, because when I first got it, because I was being very precious about it. And then there was a moment where I came out of the bank, and I had parked right in front of the bank. Someone had pulled up right next to me, and as I was opening the door to the bank to go back to my car, the person in the car next to me just opened his door and kind of slammed into my brand new car. And I took this moment, I was holding the door of the bank, and I looked at what was happening, and my first response was this physical, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to yell or scream right now. But instead, for some reason, I just paused, and I was holding this door, watching what was happening. And I saw this man like slowly coming out of this car. And then I noticed that he had one arm. And so I scanned his car. This is all within a few seconds. I scanned his whole car, and then I saw that he had a veteran sticker on his car. And immediately I started going to all the things that could have happened to him. Maybe he had lost his arm in service. Maybe he had done something, saved and been heroic for, who knows what had happened to this man. And as all this is going through my mind, he's coming towards me. And in that moment, instead of yelling at him and screaming, I just held the door for him and he walked by me. And then I walked to my car and I remember thinking, wow, I really like how I just responded. I really like how I feel right now. I got in the car and I started driving away. And then I realized, wow, I never even checked the car for the scratch. It didn't really matter at that point. So the power of the pause, a pause is what we do in life to be able to move through the world with clarity and to move through the world with compassion. And the pause is everything. And rest can happen in that pause. It's a rest, it's a pause. When I think of rest, I also think of music notes. I think of all the notes that are happening on a staff. And if it's all notes with no rest in between, it would be noise. But because there's these beautiful moments in between that give us this rest, we're able to hear the melody and we're able to experience it.
I think so many people the ego wants to get that instant gratification of yelling at that person for hitting your car. Hey, you just fucking hit my car.
Yeah.
But if you resisted that, and what you experienced, I think, is what the Buddhists call a wholesome state.
Yeah.
And this is a thing I'm really interested in, and I wish more people knew what this feeling feels like. I don't know how to describe it. If you remember, like you said, I like the way I just handled that.
Yeah.
That state of consciousness is like a wholesome state. It's in the Taoist tradition, Dao De Jing, Day is virtue. It's a virtuous state. And the Stoics talked about virtue as well. And I think people don't know what virtue feels like. It's
your highest self, highest self, your highest
like
being.
It's a magical place.
Yeah.
I wish we could transfer that consciousness into the leaders around the world.
Oh my God. Yes. And like that beautiful Buddha nature that we all have within us, and that's clouded all the time by our ego and our greed and our our aggressions. Like it's clouded. It's there though. I can't imagine that it's not there with everyone. I think that people have bigger clouds in front of them, but it's innate. It's innate. It's innate. And when we start to do the work, I find that we start to peel away what is holding us back, from that state of just complete ease, complete santosha, this place of contentment, this place that's loving, your loving nature. So
when you talk to yourself, when you pause like that, is that happening all the time? You're doing that now? Like you built up that habit?
Yeah.
Or did it start with like a morning practice or an evening practice? And how would you recommend people start to build pausing into their life? Should you watch videos about people that pause? Should you how can people start? Because that's a habit that is hard for people to start.
I think for me, it doesn't have to be that formal as to sit, do your 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, or whatever it is that you do for your practices, your tools. It can be with you throughout the whole day, because in the present moment that exists at all times. So it can be just a reminder, a check-in. And a lot of it for me is about softening the state that I'm in. It's about softening my borders. And I notice and it can happen on an instant. It can happen when I'm in line. It can happen when I'm driving. It can happen when I'm speaking to a friend. There's a softening that I work towards, a resting state that happens that I actively work at achieving when I'm, in these kind of, so I think it's more about like your consciousness is aware. And then you learn in that moment, you realize what's happening. And it's just this instant softening, this instant ease. And I do that often. It's literally this moment that I soften. It's like a softening into the moment. So
Do you believe you're using your free will to do that, or is it just happening because of the circumstances that brought you to this moment?
I think it used to be my free will, and now it's just natural at this point. Like I really think that, everything you do forms habits in your
Mm.
mind, and the way that our brain works, and it became habit forming for me to soften, like the immediate when something was going to happen, soften, immediately soften. So that just kind of, the more you respond to your body physically that way, the more you change your response in your emotional and your mental body. So the more you can change the response, the physical response has to do immediately with the body first. It's that immediate, like, I'm feeling this edge, I need to soften the edge, whether it's tightness in the chest, whether it's clenching of the fists, whether it's jaw, wherever it is that you hold, wherever that tightness comes in. It's any reaction from that happens to you, you're going to have a physical response. So it's that immediate understanding of what's happening physical. And when you respond to that physical with a softening, immediately you change, you move from states of your nervous system. You move into that parasympathetic state when you soften, and you physically do that. And the more you do it, I feel like the more it just happens. The more it happens, it becomes a habit. At
Yeah,
least for me.
for me, I think in yoga and the Taoist yoga, it's more about this feeling of energy. We did that together. Remember
Yes, that was so
wind?
cool. I love that.
I found like this as a habit. I used to, and walking through the streets, feeling it and stuff. I think that was what started it for me as a young man when in my early 20s when I was first learning it. I think when I take yoga on the mat for a long time, it was like I had a yoga on the mat and I forget it afterwards.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I studied more yoga philosophy and I'd be reading books on the subway or reading that the pause and those things began to become more real for me.
Yeah.
So I wonder if for you, if it was similar, if there was any book or any teacher that you started to absorb that you can remember that you might want to share with
Yeah.
anyone.
I mean, I have so many teachers. I mean, so
You
many
drink from
teachers.
all the honey pots. I can tell.
Sorry.
You drink from all the honey pots.
I do. I do. And
You take the
I don't,
ambrosia from everyone.
I think that is true. I actually, I do try to get different perspectives and different ways, and not just spiritual teachers all over the world, teachers, even teachers within my life, friendships that I have, that people are teaching me every day, so um yeah, your teacher can be anywhere and anything, and it's powerful. But I think the bigger thing is that you're always aware that there is a teacher, that things are challenging you, and you're always growing, and you're always a student, and I think that that's a big part of it. Like, I'll always be a student, and I'll always see myself that way.
Mm.
No matter how many times I've thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that I've taught, I still will, I still need to learn. I mean, I'm doing a whole mindfulness training with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brach in this winter, like a
Nice.
2-year program with them, just because I'm like, I need more, and it's a constant thing for me. I need more, I just need more. So, yeah, I feel like, they're two of my teachers that I love. There's a woman, monk, a nun in the Thich Nhat Hanh, Plum Village, lineage, that her name is Sister True Dedication. And if you ever have a chance to listen to her, do you know her?
No, I'm gonna check her out.
Oh, please,
What a
please.
great name. Sister
She
True
is
Dedication.
she is my favorite. I love her. I have to meet her because I have to go and meet her. That's like one of my things. But she talks about these 6 ways to love. And if you ever get a chance to listen,
From the Mud and the Lotus book, the 6.
nope, this is actually something that they did in a lecture one time, and they kind of brought it out, and now they talk about it. And one of them is something I can tie into our conversation from the beginning. She says there's one from, and these are all from Thich Nhat Hanh, but one of these beautiful little mantras that Plum Village has is, "You are partly right."
Yes.
And it sounds like, what does that mean, But when someone like comes up to you and says, "You're amazing. You're so incredible. You're a genius. I love you. You're so amazing." You can respond and say, "You are partly right." And there is truth. Maybe there is something that this person thought of you and thought, "Wow, you really are inspiring this person." But I also have a lot of flaws, and I have, weaknesses and challenges and all of those things. So there's a part that's right, but the rest is not right. The same is true, and the opposite is true. I hate this person. I hate this, blah, 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 this, the negative side of things.
Right.
There's also you are partly right, or someone who you disagree with vehemently, someone who says something that you absolutely dislike what they say. You can say you are partly right because there is a truth for them somewhere that you have to understand where they're coming from. So this "you are partly right" has this beautiful message of keeping yourself humble, but also being able to stay open-minded enough to see all sides. And it sort of softens whatever conversation you're in, so that you don't have these fixed ideas, fixed opinions about anything or anybody. It's a softening. So "you are partly right" is something I think all the time. When someone's saying something that I don't agree with, I have to say that this person is partly right somewhere. I have to see where they are. Let me explore that.
That's beautiful. We need more of that way of thinking
Yeah.
in the public discourse too. So,
And with the same set of mantras, there's another one, which is, "This is a happy moment." And again, it sounds very simple, but in practice, it's very challenging. It's challenging to be here in this moment and actually sit with what is exactly as it is, and knowing that in this moment, you're exactly where you should be. And you are, um, safe, you are healthy, you are all those things that you are in that moment. So in this moment, or when you're with other people that you love, this is a happy moment. This connection that you have with others, being able to recognize the joy in the moment is also just as powerful, as the activist work that we do, being able to find the joy, because there's joy even when there's sorrow happening. There's sorrow when there's joy happening. It's all happening in this moment, right? But if we're so present in this very moment, we're okay where we are,
I think that's a good dreg of wisdom to end with today. Is there anything, Hanya, that you wanted to share that we didn't get to chat about today?
Oh gosh, probably a lot of things. Yeah, I guess the takeaway for me with everything that's happening in the world is that we have to really do the work ourselves to keep ourselves whole, and to keep giving ourselves the moments of rest, whether it's emotional rest, physical rest, whatever it is, just so that we can return back to the work that we have to do. And that work, is the siva, the idea of like serving others, giving to yourself so you can serve others. It's all important. Yourself is, giving to yourself is just as important. But with that, we have that ability to give to others when we feel more whole. So I guess just keeping your wholeness and keeping that integrity of your own spirit, and keeping the joy somewhere. Because there's a lot of joy there too.
Rest and return. That's what we need, right?
We do. We sure do.
So thank you, Hanya. We'll put your links in the description for your book and for your website, and look forward. Hopefully, me and you will get to teach something together, do something this year. And thank you for taking the time and talking about these challenging things, and allowing some people to hear perspectives they may not have heard before. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. I am so honored to be here with you. Thank you so much.